Good morning. I'm Steve Riley. I'm state representative for the 23rd District, which is the entirety of Barron County and one voting precinct in Warren County. And I'm a retired educator. I spent 31 years in the Barron County school system, and I finished up as a high school principal. And the resolution that we're working on is Principal for a Day for our representatives and senators. In my case, representatives to go and visit schools and be a principal for a day. Go with the principal, find out what their day's like, find out how the school operates, and I think this will be very, very educational for our representatives, and I think in many ways it'll be educational for administrators that'll be a part of this. You know, one of the things that I noticed when I got out of education and when I no longer was working was that sometimes the education world does not realize all the things that the world outside of education is doing, but also the people that are not involved in schools often do not understand what schools go through on a daily basis. And I think I think we need to connect that better. And because they're both unique, they're both different, and any opportunities we get for representatives to get in our schools and find out how schools operate and all the good things that are going on in the schools and then all the difficult things that are going on in our schools, I think it helps them get a better understanding of what educators and education is going through. And also, it's important, I think, for our principals and our teachers and others to talk to people that are outside the education realm and find out a lot of the things that they have to do, a lot of the good things that are going on and a lot of the difficulties that people that may be in small business or in other areas have to go through. The Principal for a Day, I think it'd be very important for the schools to work with the legislators and see what their schedule's like. See if they're able to go through that 7-hour time period from 8 to 3 or whatever your school schedule is, or whether they have less time to be able to do that. And then I think it's important for a combination of things. I think it's important to have a sit down between the principal and the legislator to talk about a few issues. But I think it's important also for that legislator to go out in the school building and find out what's going on in classrooms, what's going on in the hallways between class exchanges, how they operate as far as lunch is concerned, all the different things that schools have to go through. And it would really be great for legislators to go, that sometimes the things that happen in schools that you don't plan happen, so they see that how you have to make adjustments. I always felt like when I was an assistant principal, which I was for 15 years, or a head principal, which I was 4 years, that you could have a list of things you wanted to do on a school day, and because of all the different things that happened, you might not get to anything on that list because you had to put out a lot of small fires, and in some cases a lot of big fires. And so I think it would be great if the legislators have to be on a day where you have to do some crisis management and such to see what all the things that our administrators and our teachers have to deal with on a daily basis. I think some of the most important things for legislators and also administrators to get out of this is one, I think it's important that there's an understanding of the difficulties that schools deal with on a daily basis. And some of those things involve the day-to-day operations, and some of those involve financing, how schools are financed and the difficulties they have with trying to meet all the conditions that they are charged to meet because of mandates and others, and yet how difficult some of those are able to finance because of situations with the economics of what schools are receiving. I think another thing that's important is just that both sides, between school administrators and also between legislators. And I don't mean sides and requires that we're opposite sides, but all the different things that have to be dealt with. And I think it's important when legislators have that discussion with administrators understand also all the difficulties that legislators have to deal with in meeting the needs of their constituents and trying to operate a state with the resources that they have. So I think those discussions, and when other people understand or better understand the difficulties that someone else goes through, I think they get a better understanding of of ways to work around those difficulties. And I think that's very important. Well, I think oftentimes KASA is the bridge between administrators and also the legislature. I think it's important because I know that I see you guys oftentimes in committee meetings and you're staying on top of what the legislature is doing as far as education is concerned. And so I think having that bridge is very important. I think it's important as a legislator, and I find out this more each year I'm up here, that it's important for us to have really good relationships and really good dialogue with KASA, KASS, KEA, and all the different K groups, KSBA. So I think that's very important. And then I think your role is both to talk to legislators about how this would be beneficial for them to get in there for a day, but also communicate with the administrators at the schools, all the schools, that it's important for you to establish a dialogue and a relationship with your legislator. It is so much easier to understand other people and what they go through if you have made a connection with them, a personal connection. I oftentimes tell people this, and I tell school people and all kinds of other people throughout the state, that if you want to communicate with your legislator, the best way to do it is a personal communication. We get so many copy and pasted emails that when you read one of them, you've read them all, and all of a sudden now you got 350, you got to delete 350 of them. And you read that one, you go through it quickly, and then sometimes it stays in your mind, sometimes it doesn't. But that personal connection, where somebody's taken the time to make a personal email or a personal phone call, means much more so than anything that's copy and pasted. Well, I think it's important. So many people, and many of them well-meaning people, don't understand the governmental process. It's amazing how many things that I get from people that are asking me to help them in a situation, and it's federal. It deals with the federal government. And so obviously I have nothing to do with it. I try to connect them to my local representative, which is Brett Guthrie. But people oftentimes don't really know what state government deals with and what federal government deals with and how those are different and yet how they intermingle in some ways. So I think it's important to know that. I think we have a lack of knowledge of civics in our state. It's easy. Oftentimes people will complain about something, and in many cases, not because they're bad people, but because of lack of knowledge, they really don't know what they're complaining about. And they'll say they're complaining about this, and oftentimes I'll say, well, we're doing that. Oh, really? I said, yeah, we're doing that. And a lot of times that comes from just a lack of knowledge of how the process works. And as I said, most of these people are well-meaning people. They want to do things the right way. They don't want to be a burden, but they oftentimes don't know exactly how things operate. So anytime we can educate people, and that we get, as legislators, as we get educated, it's important for the whole process that we try to work with each other and have open dialogue as to all the issues that people deal with. It's much easier to be empathetic toward people if you have an idea of what they're going through. And I think anytime that we can have that open communication dialogue, it's much easier to be empathetic with people and have a greater understanding of their situations and the difficulties that they deal with daily. I don't think there's any doubt that if legislators have a greater knowledge of what schools are about and what they're going through and all the benefits and the great things that are going on in schools, but also all the difficulties that they have to deal with, I think it makes it much easier for legislators to say, I've been there, I see what they're going through, I know that maybe we need to look at this piece of legislation, or we need to look at doing some things that would benefit schools and make things easier, because ultimately what we really want to do is we want to create better environments for students, and we want to create better environments for learning, because that's what school is about. And anytime that you have an educated society, you have a better society. So I think it's important that we get that knowledge and working together so we understand that. When you're in Frankfort, like I am, there's actually many more legislators that have an education background than there were when I entered in 4 years ago, many more. And it is much easier for you to have a greater understanding of that than you do the areas that you're not from. And I think we need a diversity of people with different backgrounds in Frankfort and in the legislature because there's a lot of areas I don't have an expertise in, but we got people up in Frankfort that do have an expertise in that area. And then I think it's important. That's why I think it's important to have educators, because we understand that world and that realm, and we're able to transfer that knowledge to other legislators. So I'm glad to see. I felt like the Lone Ranger to some degree the first year I was up there, and we only had 2 or 3 people that were in education. And now we've got several, and I think that makes a greater understanding.